Now, when it comes to consoles like the RGB20SX that we've got here, there are two different schools of thought. One, and perfectly valid, is that these are rushed out to market. They don't go through enough testing. There are things wrong with them that mean that they are borderline unusable and they are not worth your money. And I can see that point of view. But from where I'm coming from, when there are problems, that means there are opportunities to fix them, to explore what you can do to improve them, to have your own personal stamp on that console and to make it better and better and enjoy the process as you go along. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I love to modify my little handheld console, so these opportunities for me are something of a positive. And the more I tweak, the more I change, the more I put my own little personal stamp on this console, the more fond I become of it, and to be honest, the better it gets. So since buying this console, I have performed a few different mods. I've improved the functionality of the D-pad, I've installed a rumble motor in there that actually works, and I've improved those awful ski slope trigger buttons on the back. And now, it is currently my favourite handheld to use, particularly for Pico 8. I am absolutely loving this thing, and I do think it is much better than when I first got it. Now, just a quick note that I feel is important to make. I didn't come up with the mods that I've done in this video. I actually have done a bit of research into various different mods that you can do on this console based on what's been done already on the RGB30. In particular, a video by Retro Breeze that introduced me to the idea of doing the rumble motor installation. They actually put two rumble motors in the RGB30. They did the improvements with the tape on the D-pad. I just took that knowledge and explored what we could do on the RGB20SX. Unfortunately, there is similar hardware inside there and we can perform similar mods. But I will link that other video in the description because it is well worth a watch and there's some really useful knowledge in there, particularly in terms of setting up ArcOS, which I didn't go into much detail in this video. So depending on which way you lean, this could be a console to really get your teeth into or one to end up having you grinding your teeth. But in this video, I'll show you a few of the mods that I've done. They're dead easy and they are really effective. Take a look. So I found this thing on printables. It turned out okay. My print wasn't great because I was printing it on a very, very hot day, but it's okay. I would say though, if you search RGB20SX on printables and find this, it is nice. However, it is an extremely tight fit, and I could see it it's kind of gouged out a bit of the surface of my console there, which isn't really ideal. So if you do find this, I'll link it in the description. It is a nice design. It's a really nice, neat fit, but I would definitely say if you make it, print it in about 105% or something, get it a little bit bigger so this thing sits inside. That's probably the last time I'm going to use this one. I'm going to try scaling it up a little bit and seeing if I can get a better result. Hopefully maybe line it with felt or something like that. But anyway, onto the console, which now has a nice little scratch in the bottom there. I did a install video of these, well in fact one of these tiny little rumble motors. It's a little vibration motor. You just get a little bit of current going through the two wire connectors and it buzzes, which is kind of cool because you can use it on games like Pokemon Pinball or Drill Dozer and things like that. And I've actually got it working on PlayStation emulators as well. So it's a cool little additional feature, and there surprisingly is an actual space on the board dedicated for it that just hasn't been used. And I did the whole installation video of it and I appear to have lost the footage. I accidentally deleted it and so I don't have that to show you. So I have printed some new shoulder trigger type buttons to go on the back because I did these originally. There's a whole video about these already on YouTube if you want to find out more about them. But I did ones that have like the L1, R1 lettering in there. Someone asked me if I could do a version without those on, and I did, and I printed them and they seem pretty nice. So I'm going to put those in here, and while I've got it open, I'm going to revisit the rumble motor. I'll disconnect it and reconnect it so you can see how that gets installed. That is what we are doing here. Should be kind of cool with these new triggers going in place there. Great. So we'll just pop the back off and remove the battery connector, just a gentle wiggle for that to come out. This to one side first and replace our triggers. L1 and R1 are identical. If I flip that over there and just kind of pop that out, I can get the new one to go in. And that one there. Biggest part of this job to do is, first of all, keep track of which one is which. I suppose I'll soon find out because it'll fit in place. They just kind of hook in place and then click on there, sit flat. But these two, the R2 and L2, I've put like a little square of the rubber contact on there, so I'll need to transfer that over on those. So that is all done with my new shoulder buttons. Oh, they do look really clean actually. Right, so let's pop that over here and take a look at this. So this is the actual rumble motor that I installed. So I'll just carefully lift it off the PCB and I'll get my soldering iron on. I may as well just do a reinstall. It's not going to take me too long. So on the back of the motherboard in this area up here, there is a sort of black circular patch, and next to it a little section that says Moto with 2 connectors. That is pretty much all set for you to install one of these little rumble vibration motors. It's got a self-adhesive patch on the back to allow it to stick in place, but first we're going to solder these 2 points. I'm going to prep it first with a little bit of solder before I put the wires in place. A little bit of flux on the contacts. Truth be told, this is the second time I've done it. I recorded the whole thing, lost the footage, and yeah, I'm just taking it all off and I'll try it again. So with these points here, just simply heat the point on the board, add in a little bit of solder, and let that flow in place. Same here. And I'm going to need to clean up that flux, but I'm going to be adding the wires next anyway, so I may as well do that first. There doesn't appear to be a positive and a negative, and to be honest, it doesn't really matter. It'll just affect which way the motor inside spins. It'll still make the same vibrations. I'm just going to have to get into a comfortable position to line up the wires and get them in place. So I'll do the red one near the text where it says Moto, and it's just be very careful of the plastic in the surrounding areas, but just apply some heat so the solder melts. Keep the wire in position and then that will just melt and attach there. Same here, just melt it, move the wire into position, hold it, let that flow, make sure it's attached itself to the wire, and that's it, we're all good. So I can switch off the soldering iron because that is it in terms of the soldering. And now it's just a case of getting the vibration motor into position. But before I do that, I'm going to clean up this area here. I've got some isopropyl alcohol and I'll just use a cotton bud to clean up all the mess there. Particularly, I'll need a clean surface for the motor to stick to anyway. So that's pretty much done. Now, when you are putting the motor in place, one thing to watch out for is this little screw post here has a larger locator that goes around it. So you've got a certain amount of distance. Let's find out what it actually is. I've got some new calipers. They're left-handed. How cool is that? So we'll find out how small that gap is. 1.2 millimeters. So your motor needs to be at least 1.2 millimeters away from there. Also, you don't really want any of the metal parts touching these points or those points. So you've got to be kind of strategic with where you put it, but it's quite easy. The little tab just peels off the back. You can loop the wires around that you've just put in place there. Keep it a decent amount of clearance from there. Trying not to touch any other components. And I think we should be good because this did pop it off. That just self-adhesive sticks it down, but there is a slight gap between this and the casing. So what I did was got some double-sided tape on a little bit of foam that I had left over from a Game Boy Advance screen installation that comes with the foam to kind of apply the pressure between the screen and the shell. Peel the back off that. Just line it up with the motor there, just so that there's a little something to absorb the vibrations. So although we want it to vibrate, we don't want it to rattle. So now I can reconnect my battery, line everything up carefully. You see that closes up fine near where the rumble motor is. So it's ready for me to just put my screws back in now. So just want to briefly stop and say, if you're enjoying this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like. If you've got something to say, leave a comment. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do that. It makes a big difference. I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm trying to come out with new content and I really want to keep building it up. I'm sorry to pester you, but if you would do that, it would make a big difference. And also, if you want to support this channel, I've left affiliate links in the the description so you can buy one of these cool little consoles from PowKiddy, or there's a discounted link for Z Labs in the UK where you can buy loads of cool Game Boy modding gear and more. Go and check them out, I'd appreciate it. And thank you for your time. Back to some more mods on this thing. A couple of other things I've found. I've been playing a lot of Pico 8, and on Celeste I am getting some interference in terms of the false diagonals on the D-pad, and also I got a similar kind of effect when I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater with trying to hit particular tricks and it was reading false diagonals. So I'm going to try and address that issue with the D-pad. I'm going to remove the motherboard for the first time. I'm going to have to be very careful of the joysticks that are in because they've got these little ribbons connecting them. So I'm going to unscrew those. Also, we've got the screen attached here and we don't want to be ripping any ribbons off with that. So I'll just lift that carefully with a spudger. It just flicks up there so the ribbon should come out when we lift the motherboard out. The motherboard itself is held in with 4 screws, I think. Are there any at the top? One in the middle here. Very short screws, these. One there, 2 at the bottom down here near the battery connector. I mean, I could disconnect the battery connector at this point actually and just remove the rear half out of the equation here. And there's also a connector here for, I'm assuming, possibly to power the screen or something, but I'm going to disconnect that one as well. Just remember that the battery is that side and the other one is here, and I want to make sure I remember that, but it's got bat over there, so I'll know that that's the right one. One more screw to undo here. You don't actually want to be messing about with these ribbon cables, like taking them out and putting them in if you can avoid it, so I'm going to try to avoid that if I can. And it seems like I've got all the screws out that I need to. See if I can lift out the motherboard now, unless I've missed out any screws, which is kind of probable. So it looks like I've got all the screws out that I... Oh my word. Yes, of course. So before you try taking your console apart and destroying everything, be sure to remove your SD cards because that will grip it into the console. Right, let's see if that lifts. Oh, look at that. They'll come out super easy now. Hopefully I've not done any damage to my SD cards. And, you know, we live and learn, don't we? Let's just lift out my 2 joysticks from there. And then there's that ribbon just kind of hooked around there. And now we've got access to the insides. You've got like the larger 2 bits and then the 2 small triangular bits. And the mods that I've seen just leave the triangular bits exposed. And what they do is they cut like a little V-notch out of the tape. But looking at it and looking at where these angles line up, what I'm going to do, get a couple of lengths of this tape. Just kind of stick it across in those sort of directions. That's a bit going across there. So there you can see it's got just the strips of tape going across on these diagonals, and that should be plenty for what we need. And now to try and put it back together without damaging anything, just lining up, making sure that the silicone membrane is in the right place there. It's already kind of attached to the motherboard there, so we'll put that one on. And I could do with something to just raise it up while all this is going in, so I'll get one of my rolls of tape and just sit it there. My little smiley face button that is fairly useless, unfortunately, the function button there. And then maybe they'll add more functionality to that in future. Then I've got to get my joysticks in the right spot, and my little cable, wherever that went, coming out here. So this bit's kind of fiddly, but now that I know the SD card was the main issue, how embarrassing is that? The thing is, it's worth sharing that kind of thing, because if I missed it, other people might miss it, and so on. Joysticks lined up correctly there. So we've got the wire coming through there, which goes onto the other side here. So that's right. And yeah, let's just get all those back in. Line up the ribbon in position and just push that in and flick the catch down. So that's locked the ribbon in place, that's fine. One more of these motherboard screws to go in. Last thing I need to attach is just my battery connector here, making sure it's the right way around. So you've got the, as you're looking at it from the back like this, you've got the black wire towards the right. To put this back together, because I've got the custom shoulder buttons there and they tend to flap about the place, I've got that facing this way. And I think I'm pretty much good to go with getting that back together. Everything pops in place. Okay, I've just noticed that the HDMI port is slightly misaligned. That'll need to be snapped into position there because that's kind of held out slightly. I'm not even going to bother with the SD cards until I've got it all back together now. So just check that everything snaps and fits in place. It's all lined up correctly. There we go. So I think I might design my own storage case or a variation of the existing storage case for this thing that has space for spare SD cards, because you can have different ROM collections for the ones for going in the game slot, and you can also have a few operating system ones, which is what I've been doing. So for running the vibration, you need to be using ArcOS, which is one of the operating systems. Alternatively, it comes with Rocknix, and that's like a newer version of GelOS. So I've actually got separate SD cards. I've got one for Rocknix, one for GelOS, and one for the ArcOS, which is in here now. And I'm going to use for doing a little bit of the rumble testing, because although I've done it and tested it before, I've just put a new one in and it may not work. Also, I've got the upgraded D-pad now, so testing that, it is much, much better. And I've got the new shoulder buttons, new triggers on the back, and actually the smooth flat surface here does feel much better. They are all clicking really effectively. So actually now this is way, I mean, I liked it when I first got it, but now it is way, way better. The D-pad totally sorted, loads more responsive, and I've got rumble. So if I go to Game Boy Advance, I can never remember whether to go up or down, but we'll find Game Boy Advance soon enough. There we are. And I should really start a list of favorites, but we'll just go down to Drill Dozer. There we go. Doesn't seem to be any problem with save games on this. It's quite good. Like, you save it within the game, and then the next time you load it up, it's all done. So let's try that. Yeah. If I turn the volume down, and then if I put that near my microphone and just hold the R trigger to do my drilling. Works really well. Really well. It feels great. That sound isn't actually hugely pronounced. It's only because I've put it right next to my microphone, so I can prove to you that it works. But yeah, it's really good, and it works on this. Like I say, it'll do for Pokemon Pinball. It'll do for lots of PlayStation games. When you're doing PlayStation games, if I just come out of here and go into PlayStation, there's a few settings that you have to enable, and then you come out of the emulator back in and it works fine. So if I find PlayStation, it's somewhere down here. There we go. There's a few games work, a few games don't. You just have to kind of test it, but I've been going on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater with it. When the emulator loads, you access the settings. So you can see there the remap file has been loaded. So you need to remap it. First of all, that it is got the rumble switched on. So you hold select and X. And within there, one of your core options is on the input, and you have to enable rumble effects on. Also on the list there on controls, you go to port 1 controls, and I've now got that set to dual shock, but there are other ones. So it's got standard by default, and then there's like analog, negcom, guncom, mouse for the different things that you're playing. So if you set it to dual shock and you save those settings, and then you come out of the emulator and back in again, it will all work. So when I'm playing this game, and if I just go in, it's not normally like when you grind or when you crash or whatever else, but the rumble does work, and it was just like, it took me right back to playing this on the PS1, which were happy times. I always forget though, when you're on the PlayStation emulator, the A button is now redundant because you've got effectively the cross button at the bottom. So we'll continue there. Like I say, the falling off, the slams, the bails, whatever you want to call them, are the bits where it really starts to rumble. We'll just have a quick go. And the other work, so it'll just fall straight off. This is where I can completely fail to there we go. So that rumbled when I fell. And then if I make my way over to like the bar here and grind and getting the rumbles on that, and then I slam again and it's rumbling, and it really does. I mean, it makes this handheld, so I love this handheld anyway, but it makes it just that bit more awesome. So yeah, there we go. It's all modded up now, vibrating away as I'm going through the puddle. I've got my upgraded shoulder triggers. I've got my improved D-pad. I'll tell you what, let's just quickly come out of here. In fact, no, let's not. Let's continue, because when I'm on here and before, when I was doing certain tricks, they were not always working because it was reading false diagonals, because some of these tricks use the diagonals and some of them use the standard directional, and this is like responding to every single trick that I'm doing here. It's just working really well and feels really responsive. And then if we do, after all, come out of this and go on to Pico 8, I'm planning a whole video about Pico 8. I have been playing it all the time. It's most of what I've been playing on this. I think it's a wonderful platform that needs more recognition, and I've got a lot of favourite games I want to share with you on it. But for now, if I can ever find it on this list, we're going to have a little look at Celeste. So if I just go straight into Celeste from my menu there, I was having a lot of difficulty with this because there's a lot of very precision inputs. Sometimes you're going horizontally, sometimes you're going straight up, sometimes you're going diagonally. I was finding that quite difficult. Right, so now if I want these controlled inputs, if I want to go horizontally, I can do that. If I want to go diagonally, I can do that. So it's much more reliable in terms of those directional controls. So yeah, love it. It's like, I was quite fond of this anyway. The thing is, I like modding stuff. I know to a lot of people this might be an inconvenience that you have to do all this to make it better, but I enjoy modding stuff, so I'm liking playing on it, I'm liking modding it. I am not liking being in this very, very hot shed, which is currently at 26 degrees in here and very stuffy. So I am calling it a day for now. But yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to go and play some more Pico 8 and then I'll see you in a bit. Now, I have to say, I am genuinely loving this console. I have got loads of these kind of retro emulation handheld consoles. I've also got lots of genuine Game Boy hardware. But this is truly taking up a lot of my time. Whether I am emulating my favourite old PS1 games, or more likely exploring the vast library of amazing cool little games that you've got on Pico 8. It's just a wonderful thing to pick up and play when I've got a spare 5 minutes here and there. And in terms of modification, it is exciting. It's early days yet. This has not been out for long, and already I've made a number of improvements to it. Also, I've had other people get in touch with me showing some cool mods that they've done with this thing. I think the next step maybe is to actually eliminate the shoulder buttons and the analog sticks and everything else altogether. Maybe simplify this console right down to being a dedicated Pico 8 console with just 2 input buttons and the D-pad. That would be really awesome. So I think that the scene with this console could run and run. Or maybe I will just be here on my own, running and running, making mods while everyone else has forgotten about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to see my initial impressions of this console, check them out on the video up here. You'll see how far we've come.